You might wonder how it all started, how a simple act of love, a mother willing to donate her kidney to her son, was about to unravel a web of secrets, lies, and betrayal that had been carefully hidden from view. It wasn't just the physical surgery that was at stake, but the very fabric of our family, the trust, the love we had built over the years. I never expected that my son, Adam, whom I had loved and raised all these years, would be caught in such a situation. And yet, there I was, preparing to give him a piece of myself, not knowing that my own flesh and blood was about to expose a shocking truth. My grandson, Mario, with his innocent questions, would soon reveal a secret so deep it would shake our entire family to its core. I'm Mary, and this is the story of how a mother's love, a family's loyalty, and a betrayal so deep changed everything. Stay with me till the end, and I promise you, you'll never see the ones you trust in the same way again. And if you're watching this from anywhere, leave a comment letting me know where you re from, and do you forget to subscribe to my channel. The tension in the air was unbearable. As I lay on that cold hospital table, my mind racing with a million thoughts, yet none of them truly making sense. I was about to do something for my son, Adam, something I had been preparing for weeks: the donation of my kidney. It was supposed to be a simple act of love, of sacrifice. But then, just before the surgery, my grandson, Mario, stepped into the room with a revelation that would change everything. He held something in his hands, something that, in the end, would expose all the lies I had been blind to. How could it be that something so pure, something meant to save a life, would soon unravel the darkest secret of my family? I didn't know yet, but I would soon find out. As the nurses and doctors moved around me, preparing for the operation, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Mario's eyes were filled with worry, his hand trembling as he held up his phone, showing me something I wasn't ready to see. What was it? A secret about my son, about the family I had loved and cared for all these years. How had I not noticed it before? How had I been so blind? The truth was about to hit me hard, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, stood in the corner of the room, her gaze cold and calculating as she watched everything unfold. She had always been the one who held herself with a certain level of authority in the family, but today, I saw something different in her eyes. There was an edge, a sharpness that made the air feel even thicker. I could tell she didn't want me to go through with this surgery, but I couldn't understand why. Was it because she didn't trust me, or was there something else she was hiding? She didn't speak much, but her silence spoke volumes. Her eyes bore into me, not with concern or love, but with something more sinister, as if she were waiting for me to make a mistake. Are you sure about this, Mary? Her voice, though soft, had a sharp undertone that sent chills down my spine. You're not getting any younger. Are you sure you want to put yourself through this? I felt her words like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. Was she really concerned about me, or was there something more to her cold demeanor? I didn't know, but I could sense that Rebecca was not the innocent, caring woman I had once believed her to be. The way she looked at me, the way her eyes narrowed with suspicion, told me everything I needed to know. Rebecca wasn't just questioning my decision, she was trying to control it, trying to control me, and I didn't know it yet. But the answers I sought were far darker than I ever imagined. As I lay there in the sterile hospital room, memories of my past flooded my mind like a river rushing through the valley. I thought of Joe, my late husband, and the life we had built together. He was always the strong one, the one who held everything together, while I stood by him, always willing to sacrifice for the sake of our family. But now, with Joe gone, it seemed that the weight of everything was on my shoulders. I had raised my children, cared for them, loved them, and yet here I was, about to give up one of my most precious organs for my son, Adam. I had always been a mother first, and that instinct never left me. Even when the years grew long, and my body began to show the signs of age, my love for my children never wavered. I had fought for them, protected them, and now, it seemed like the time had come to give everything I had left for Adam. But as I thought about it, I couldn't help but wonder, was I really doing this for Adam, or was it because I felt I had no other choice, no other way to prove my love for him? The past had a way of catching up with you, and as I thought about the sacrifices I had made for my family, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just out of sight, something that I hadn't fully understood yet. Was it the guilt of knowing that I had failed my husband in some way, or was it the realization that, in my desperation to hold on to my family, I had allowed myself to ignore the warning signs. Whatever it was, I knew that my past, like a shadow, would always follow me, no matter how much I tried to outrun it. I remember when Adam was just a little boy, full of life, always asking questions, always reaching for the stars. He was my pride and joy, the light of my life. I watched him grow, struggle, and become the man he was today, and I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. But, as time passed, something changed. The illness took over him, slowly but surely, and the boy I had once known seemed to fade away. His strength was replaced with weakness, and the vitality that once radiated from him was replaced with a quiet, fragile existence. I had spent so many years taking care of him, loving him, and protecting him, and now, as I prepared to give him one of my kidneys, I couldn't help but wonder, was this my last chance to save him? Was this the one thing I could do to keep my son alive, to bring him back to the man he used to be? As the surgery loomed closer, the fear of losing him grew stronger, and I realized that, in my heart, I was willing to do anything to save him. He was my son, and nothing would ever change that. No matter how many years passed or how much he had changed, I would always be there for him, ready to give whatever it took. But as I thought about Adam and the life he had lived, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. He had always been the person I trusted the most, and now, I was beginning to question everything. Was there more to his illness than I knew? Was I doing the right thing? Or was there something hidden, that I had failed to see? I didn't know the answer, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't give up on him. Not now, not ever. Rebecca was always the picture of grace in public, the perfect daughter-in-law, the caring wife. But there was something in her demeanor, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, that made me uneasy. She was always so composed, so calm, yet in her presence, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She wasn't the woman I thought she was, and I began to see the cracks in her perfect facade. It wasn't just the way she spoke to me, or the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. No, it was more than that. It was the way she seemed to have control over everything, always steering things in the direction she wanted, manipulating those around her to get her way. She had a smile that could light up a room, but underneath it, I could feel a sharpness, a coldness that didn't match the warmth she pretended to show. I began to notice the subtle gestures, the way she spoke to Adam, the way she tried to keep him dependent on her. And it wasn't just that. It was the whispers I overheard when she thought no one was listening, the secretive conversations she had with her family. What was she planning? What was she hiding? I didn't know, but I knew one thing for sure. There was something more to Rebecca than met the eye. I started paying closer attention, watching for the signs that I had missed for so long. The more I observed, the more I realized that Rebecca was playing a game, and I was just another pawn in it. She wasn't the caring wife and daughter-in-law I had once believed her to be. No, she was something far more dangerous, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not anymore. Brandon, my youngest son, had always been quiet. He wasn't the type to voice his opinions or make waves. But there was something about him that set him apart from the rest of the family. While Adam's illness and Rebecca's manipulations consumed everyone around me, Brandon remained a steady presence, watching, listening, and, more than anything, questioning. It wasn't until recently that I began to realize just how much he had seen, how much he understood. He didn't say much, but the few words he did speak always seemed to carry more weight than any others. There was a quiet strength in him, a certain level of wisdom that came from his ability to observe without judgment. As I sat in the living room, trying to piece together the puzzle that had become my life, Brandon sat beside me. His eyes were calm, thoughtful, but there was a flicker of concern in them that I couldn't ignore. "Mom, I don't trust Rebecca," he said one evening, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. For the first time, someone else saw what I was starting to see, the darkness that was creeping into our family, the manipulation, the lies. Brandon's suspicion wasn't just a passing thought. It was the product of careful observation, of watching Rebecca's every move, of sensing the things that no one else had. He was the first to realize that there was more going on than we had understood. And in that moment, I knew that Brandon, the quiet son, was the one who would help me uncover the truth. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Mario was always the curious one, the one who asked questions before anyone else even thought to. He was sharp, perceptive, and though he was still young, he had a way of seeing things that no one else could. It wasn't long before I realized that Mario, my grandson, was not only watching what was happening in our family, But he was starting to understand things that most of us were blind to. His innocent questions were like little seeds of doubt, gently planted in my mind, making me question everything I had once believed to be true. One day, as I sat in the kitchen, trying to make sense of the tangled web Rebecca had woven around our family, Mario came up to me with a simple question. "Grandma, do you think Adam's getting the right medicine?" His words stopped me in my tracks. Of course, Adam was getting the right medicine, wasn't he? But there was something in Mario's voice, something that made me pause. Why would he ask such a thing? Was there something I had missed? It was in that moment that I realized Mario wasn't just a curious child. He had already started putting the pieces together, connecting dots that I hadn't even thought to look for. It was as if he could see the truth that I couldn't. He was the one who would show me the path forward, the one who would open my eyes to the secrets that had been hidden right in front of me. Mario wasn't just a child anymore. He was the key to uncovering the truth about what was really happening to our family. The pressure was building, and I could feel it weighing on me every day. It wasn't just Rebecca anymore now. Her family was involved, and they were pressuring me in ways I had never imagined. They kept telling me how important this surgery was, how I had to be the one to save Adam, that I had no choice but to go through with it. The words were almost too much to bear, and every time they spoke, it felt like they were pushing me into a corner, stripping me of my autonomy, of my will. Their voices blended into a constant hum in the background, trying to convince me, manipulate me into doing what they wanted. But something about their insistence didn't sit right with me. They didn't care about my well-being or the risks I was taking. It wasn't about me or Adam's future. It was about their expectations, their needs. Rebecca's parents had become the loudest voices in the room, constantly telling me that it was my duty as a mother, that I had to save my son no matter the cost. It felt more like a demand than a request, more like an obligation than an act of love. And as I listened to their voices, I began to feel trapped. They didn't care about the consequences. They didn't care about what I wanted. They only cared about getting what they wanted. It was becoming clear that I wasn't the one making the decisions anymore. It was them. But I was going to let them push me into something I was sure about. Not this time. Not again. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. It was soft at first, just the faintest whisper, but it was enough to send a chill down my spine. I had been sitting in the living room, the lights dimmed, trying to clear my mind when I overheard Rebecca's voice. At first, I couldn't make out what she was saying, but I could hear her talking to someone in the hallway, her words laced with urgency and secrecy. "Make sure everything goes as planned. The results need to be perfect," she whispered. I couldn't hear the other voice, but I didn't need to. I knew something was wrong. I had suspected it for a while now, but hearing her speak so openly, so casually, about something that sounded like a plan was enough to make my blood run cold. What results? What was she planning? I strained to hear more, but as quickly as it had started, the conversation ended, and the house fell silent again. My heart raced as I sat there in the dark, the weight of what I had just overheard settling heavy in my chest. What was going on behind my back? What was Rebecca hiding, and what role did I play in it? I knew I had to get to the bottom of this before it was too late. Brandon had always been the quiet one, the one who watched from the sidelines, but something had shifted in him. After I overheard Rebecca's conversation, I knew I had to share my suspicions with someone I could trust. When I told Brandon about what I had heard, his expression became serious, as though he had been expecting this all along. "Mom, I've been doing some digging," he said quietly, his voice filled with concern. "I think I've found something that might explain what's really going on." I followed him into the kitchen, where he had gathered a few items. There, on the counter, were several unmarked medicine bottles. The labels had been scratched off, and the contents were unknown. "Look at these," he said, pointing to the bottles. "These are the same ones that Adam's been taking." My heart sank. I had known that Adam had been struggling with his treatment, but I never thought to question the medication he was given. Why were these pills in bottles with no labels? Why had no one mentioned them before? Brandon's face was filled with worry as he showed me the evidence he had uncovered. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but there were still too many unanswered questions. How could Rebecca, my own daughter-in-law, be involved in something so sinister? And why hadn't anyone told me about these medications? I knew that whatever was happening, it was much worse than I had imagined. And now, with Brandon's discovery, I knew we had to act fast before it was too late. Mario had a way of asking questions that cut right to the heart of things. That day, he sat down beside me, his eyes wide with innocence, but there was a seriousness in his gaze that made my stomach drop. "Grandma," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "do you think anyone could be giving Adam medicine on purpose, like to hurt him?" The question caught me off guard. At first, I thought it was just a child's curiosity, a fleeting thought that didn't mean anything. But as I looked into Mario's eyes, I realized there was more to it. He had been paying attention, more than I had realized. And what he was asking wasn't just a random question, it was the seed of a truth I wasn't ready to face. Could someone really be doing that to my son? Could someone in my own family be poisoning him? The thought was almost too much to bear. But Mario's question had planted the seed of doubt in my mind. And as much as I tried to push it away, I couldn't. What if he was right? What if the answer was staring me in the face, and I was too blind to see it? I had to find out the truth. No matter how painful it would be, I couldn't just sit by and let it happen. Not to Adam, not to my family. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Mario's question had dug its claws into my mind, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to look closer. The next day, as I walked into the living room, I found Rebecca alone, sitting at the table with Adam. She was holding a small pill bottle, the kind I'd seen before, and I watched as she carefully took out a pill and handed it to him. My heart raced. Was this the same medication that had been making Adam so weak? I watched from the doorway, hidden in the shadows, as Rebecca placed the pill in Adam's hand. But something didn't sit right. Adam looked confused, as though he wasn't sure whether to take it or not. He hesitated, but Rebecca was insistent, urging him to take it. "It's going to help you," she said in a sweet, comforting voice, but her words felt hollow, empty. Something was off. As Adam took the pill, I felt a surge of panic. I knew that this wasn't part of his prescribed treatment. The pills that had been given to him before had been carefully monitored, and this one, this strange pill, was not one of them. My stomach churned as I realized the truth. Rebecca had been giving him something that wasn't prescribed. But why? What was she trying to do to him? And why was she so determined to keep it a secret? I had to find out what was going on before it was too late. I wasn't sure how much more I could take. The truth was coming out, piece by piece, and the more I learned, the more my world felt like it was crumbling. But then, Mario came to me with something that changed everything. He had a recording, a small, innocuous-looking phone, but what it contained was nothing short of explosive. He handed it to me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. "Grandma, listen to this," he urged, his voice trembling. I took the phone from his hand and pressed play. At first, it was quiet, just a low murmur in the background, but then, Rebecca's voice cut through the silence, clear and unmistakable. "The results need to be perfect. We can't afford any mistakes. The old woman won't dare refuse," she said, her words dripping with malice. My blood ran cold as I listened. She had been plotting something behind my back, and I had no idea how deep the betrayal went. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. It was worse than I had imagined. She hadn't just been manipulating Adam's treatment, she had been planning something far more sinister. The realization hit me hard. I had been blinded by my own love and trust. And now I was seeing Rebecca for who she truly was. This wasn't just about the kidney transplant anymore. This was about something far darker, something that would change the course of our entire family's future. The recording was the proof, and now I had to make sure the truth came out before it was too late. The tension in the air was palpable as I sat down with my family. Everyone was there: Rebecca, her parents, Brandon, and Adam, though he looked weaker than ever, barely able to keep his eyes open. I had made up my mind. I was going to donate my kidney to Adam, no matter what it took. But something inside me was screaming that I couldn't just do it without confronting the truth. Rebecca was sitting across from me, her face a mask of calm, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She knew, just like I did, that the time for secrets was over. "I'm going through with the surgery," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But not because of what any of you want. I'm doing this for my son, for Adam. And I will not let anyone manipulate me into thinking otherwise." My words hung in the air like a challenge, daring anyone to disagree. Brandon, who had been quietly watching the scene unfold, finally spoke up. His voice was filled with anger and worry. "Mom, don't do it," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "Rebecca, She's hiding something. I've seen it. I've found things. He glanced at Rebecca's parents, who were both staring at him with thinly veiled disdain. She's poisoning Adam, and no one seems to care. But you are too focused on saving him. You're not seeing the truth. Rebecca's face turned pale, but she quickly recovered, her eyes narrowing. This is none of your business, Brandon, she snapped. I'm doing what's best for Adam. But I could hear the cracks in her voice, the lies in her words. It was all too clear now. She had no intentions of saving Adam. I had no idea how deep the lies went, but in that moment, I knew I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. The real battle wasn't about the kidney transplant, it was about exposing the secrets that had been lurking in our family for too long. The thought of writing my will felt like a heavy weight on my chest, but with everything that had been happening, it was the only thing I could do. As I sat at the old desk in my study, the pen trembling in my hand, I couldn't help but feel like I was preparing for my last moments. The surgery was so close now, and I knew the risks. At my age, nothing was guaranteed. I had lived a long life, but the thought of leaving my family with all these unresolved issues tore at me. It wasn't just the kidney I was worried about, no. It was the truth that was still hidden. The secrets that had to come out before it was too late. I took a deep breath and started writing. I spoke of my love for my children, my hopes for them, my regret that things had come to this. I wrote about my fears, my suspicions, and my love for Adam. But the hardest part was acknowledging the pain that had been inflicted by Rebecca. I didn't want to leave the world without confronting her, without making sure that someone knew what had happened to Adam, and how her actions had caused this family so much suffering. As I signed the document, I couldn't help but wonder if this would be my last chance to protect my family. Would they understand the choices I had made? Would they be able to see the truth behind the lies that had torn us apart? I didn't know. But as I sealed the envelope, I promised myself one thing. I wouldn't go quietly. I wouldn't let the darkness win. The day of the surgery had arrived, and with it came an overwhelming sense of dread. I had been in and out of hospitals my whole life, but nothing compared to the cold, sterile feeling of the operating room that awaited me. The family was gathered around, but there was an air of quiet confidence among Rebecca and her parents. They seemed so sure, so certain that everything would go according to their plan. But in the pit of my stomach, a voice was telling me that something wasn't right. As I was wheeled down the hallway toward the operating room, the sound of the wheels on the floor echoed loudly in the otherwise quiet hospital. My heart raced, and I could feel the pressure building in my chest. This wasn't just a surgery, it was a battle. And I wasn't sure if I was walking into it as a willing participant or a victim. Rebecca's gaze was fixed ahead, her expression unreadable. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something dark that I hadn't noticed before. I wanted to ask her what was really going on, what she was planning, but I didn't have the strength. My mind was filled with too many questions. Was she really trying to help Adam? Or was she playing me, leading me down this path for some other reason? The closer I got to the operating room, the more I felt like I was walking into a trap. There, lying on the sterile hospital bed, Adam looked so small, so fragile. The once vibrant, strong son I had known seemed so distant now, swallowed up by his illness. His eyes were heavy, and his body weak, but when he saw me, a faint smile crossed his face. I took his hand gently, my heart breaking at the sight of him. "I'll be okay, Mom," he whispered, his voice hoarse, barely audible. "Don't worry about me." But I was worried more than he could ever know. I wasn't sure I could bear the thought of losing him, especially after everything that had happened. I had already given so much of myself, and yet, I didn't know if it would be enough. The weight of my love for him, the responsibility I felt as his mother, seemed almost too much to carry. As I bent down to kiss his forehead, I promised him, though my voice trembled, "I'm going to save you, Adam. No matter what, I will fight for you." The tears welled up in my eyes, but I wiped them away quickly, not wanting him to see my fear. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't giving up on him. Not now, not ever. The moment I was about to be wheeled into the operating room, a familiar voice cut through the air, sending a shiver down my spine. "Mom, don't do it." It was Brandon, his voice filled with panic, desperation, and love all at once. I turned to see him rushing toward me, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. He was out of breath, like he had been running for miles. "Brandon," I said, my voice shaky. "What are you doing here?" "It's too late. I've made my decision. This is the only way to save Adam." But he wasn't listening. He grabbed my arm gently, but firmly, pulling me back from the stretcher. No, Mom, you don't understand. I've found something about Rebecca. She's been planning this all along. You're walking into her trap, and you don't even know it. His words were like a slap in the face. A trap, Rebecca. Everything seemed to stop for a moment. My heart skipped a beat as I tried to process what he was saying. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Brandon's face was full of urgency as he spoke, lowering his voice to avoid being overheard. She's been poisoning Adam. She's not trying to help him. This surgery. It's all part of her plan. I stared at him, disbelief flooding my mind. How could this be true? Could it really be happening right under my nose? Brandon's words echoed in my mind as we made our way out of the hospital. He pulled me aside in the parking lot, away from the chaos of the emergency room entrance. The cool evening air hit my face, but it did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. He had something else to show me, something that would confirm the truth of what he was saying. I wasn't sure I was ready for it, but at the same time, I knew I had to see it. I don't have much time, Mom, Brandon said, his voice tight with urgency. But I need you to look at this. He handed me his phone, and the screen showed a video clear and undeniable evidence of Rebecca's betrayal. The footage was from a security camera in the hospital parking lot, showing Rebecca meeting with a man I didn't recognize. They exchanged something in a small brown envelope, money, or something else, before quickly parting ways. My hands trembled as I watched the video, each second sinking deeper into my stomach. The look on Rebecca's face was one of calmness, too calm for someone who was supposedly trying to help her family. What was she involved in? Who was the man? And why was she so determined to keep these secret dealings hidden from everyone? I knew there was something off about her, Brandon muttered under his breath. But this ... this is proof. She's been hiding something from all of us. I had to confront her, but my heart felt heavy. The betrayal was too much to bear. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted her? Now, I had to decide how to move forward with this painful truth. I was standing in the hallway of the hospital, still reeling from the evidence Brandon had shown me, when I heard the unmistakable sound of hurried footsteps. I turned, just in time to see Mario, my brave grandson, rushing toward me. His face was flushed with determination, his eyes wide with urgency. "Grandma, I've got something that will end this once and for all," Mario said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and hope. I looked at him, confused, unsure of what he meant, but there was something in his tone that told me this was the moment we had been waiting for. The moment when everything would come crashing down. Without another word, Mario reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He pressed a button, and suddenly, the audio of the same recording I had heard earlier filled the air. Rebecca's voice, clear as day, echoed in the hallway. "The results need to be perfect. The old woman won't dare refuse," she said, her words dripping with malice. My heart stopped. There it was, proof that Rebecca had been planning something far darker than I could have ever imagined. Mario stood beside me, his expression firm as he watched the impact of the recording on my face. "She's been playing us all along, Grandma," he said quietly. "But now we have the truth. We can stop her." In that moment, I felt a surge of relief mixed with rage. Finally, the truth was out in the open. There was no more hiding, no more lies. I knew that this would be the turning point. Rebecca's reign of deception was over. But now, the real challenge would be to make sure justice was served. With the recording in hand, Mario and I knew there was no going back. The truth was now undeniable. As I listened to the conversation between Rebecca and the mysterious man, my heart sank further into my chest. The words she spoke were damning, revealing a plan that was nothing short of cruel. Rebecca had been conspiring behind our backs, using Adam's illness as a pawn in a much larger, darker scheme. I felt the weight of the betrayal crushing me, each word cutting deeper. "The old woman won't dare refuse," Rebecca had said, referring to me, as though I were nothing more than an obstacle to be moved aside. She had been playing me, using my love for Adam to carry out her twisted plot. I couldn't believe I had trusted her, believed in her sincerity. But now, with this recording, there was no denying the truth. As I stood there, holding the phone, my mind raced with the possibilities. What had she been planning? What were the real motives behind her actions, and who else had been involved? I knew I had to confront her, but the anger inside me was almost too much to contain. It wasn't just about the kidney surgery anymore. It was about stopping her from causing any more harm. It was about protecting my family and making sure that no one else fell victim to her manipulations. Mario looked at me with a knowing glance. "It's time, Grandma," he said softly. "We can't let her get away with this." And he was right. The time had come for Rebecca to face the consequences of her actions. I could feel the tension in the air as we gathered in the living room, everyone in the family present. Rebecca stood across from me, her eyes cold and calculating, as though she hadn't just been exposed for everything she had done. There was no remorse in her eyes, only defiance. It was as though she still thought she could manipulate her way out of this, but I wasn't going to let her. "Not anymore. You've lied to all of us, Rebecca," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've been poisoning Adam. You've been plotting all along, and now the truth is out." Her expression didn't change, but I could see the way her hands trembled ever so slightly. She was trying to maintain control, but I could feel her losing it. Her grip on this family, on my son, was slipping, and I wasn't about to let her have any more power over us. Suddenly, Brandon stepped forward, his face filled with a quiet fury. Without a word, he walked up to Rebecca and slapped her across the face. It was hard to watch, but at the same time, I knew it was necessary. He had been holding back for so long, and now, he was confronting the woman who had torn our family apart. "You poisoned him," he said, his voice low but fierce. "You hurt my brother, and you tried to turn us all against each other. No more. This ends now." Rebecca stumbled back, her face flushed with a mixture of shock and rage. "You don't know what you're talking about," she hissed, but there was no conviction in her words. She knew it was over. This was the moment when everything that had been hidden in the shadows was brought into the light. And as I stood there, watching Rebecca, I knew one thing for sure: she would never have the power over my family again. The tension in the room was unbearable as Rebecca stood there, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. Brandon's slap had shaken her, but she wasn't ready to give up just yet. She opened her mouth to say something, but the sound of sirens outside drowned out her words. The police had arrived. I hadn't called them. I didn't need to. The evidence was clear now, and all we had to do was wait for the authorities to take over. The sound of the door opening and the heavy footsteps of the officers coming inside felt like the final nail in Rebecca's coffin. She looked around the room, her eyes shifting from one person to the next, but no one moved. No one would protect her anymore. As the officers approached, Rebecca's defiance began to fade. She backed away slowly, as if trying to shrink into the shadows. "You can't do this," she said, her voice trembling now. "You don't understand." But it was too late. The officers knew exactly what was going on. They had all the evidence they needed. They moved toward her with certainty, and Rebecca's parents, standing off to the side, exchanged nervous glances. They knew their daughter was done. As the officers cuffed Rebecca and began to escort her out of the house, I could feel a strange sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in so long, I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. The lies, the manipulation, it was all over. Now, it was time for us to heal. The truth had finally come to light, and as the police took Rebecca away, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and sorrow. The whole time, I had trusted her, believed in her, and to find out she had been poisoning Adam, manipulating us all, was a wound that would take time to heal. But now, I had to focus on what mattered most. Adam. I stood by his side, my heart aching as I watched him, pale and weak, but now, finally, getting the right treatment. No more harmful pills, no more false hope, just the care he needed, with no one trying to destroy him from the inside out. The doctors had finally confirmed it. Rebecca had been giving Adam unauthorized medication. These drugs weren't just unprescribed, they were part of an illegal experiment. She'd been using his condition to test these drugs, all while pretending to care for him, pretending to be his savior. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She had never been trying to help Adam. She was using him as a guinea pig in some twisted scheme. But now, with Rebecca behind bars, Adam was getting the right treatment. He was starting to show signs of improvement, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew we could rebuild. We could heal. And most importantly, we could move forward together as a family, stronger and wiser than before. It wasn't easy, but Adam was slowly starting to recover. Every day, I saw a little more life returning to him. The color in his cheeks, the spark in his eyes, it was as though he was coming back from the brink. The doctors were optimistic now, the right medications, the right treatments, and finally, a sense of peace that had been so long in coming. I sat with him every day, watching him slowly regain his strength. We talked about everything, about his future, about the mistakes we had made, and the lessons we had learned. "I never thought I'd be this weak, Mom," Adam said one day, his voice rough, but with a touch of humor. "I always thought I was invincible." I smiled, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "No one's invincible, Adam, not even the strongest among us. But you're stronger than you think, and you'll make it through this. We all will." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. Adam was going to be okay. It wasn't just about the kidney transplant anymore, it was about his life, his future, and the love we all had for him. He had a second chance, and together, we would make sure he didn't waste it. As Adam's health improved, I could see the weight of the past months slowly lifting from his shoulders, but there was something else weighing him down: guilt. The guilt of what he had put me through, of what he had almost lost. I could see it in his eyes whenever he looked at me, that deep remorse that only a child could feel when they think they've failed a parent. One evening, as I sat by his bed, he reached out and took my hand. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking, "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to go through all of this. I never meant to put you in danger, especially with the surgery. I don't know how I can ever make it up to you." I could feel the sincerity in his words, the depth of his regret. I squeezed his hand gently, looking into his eyes with all the love I had in my heart. "Adam, my dear," I said softly, "there's nothing to forgive. You didn't ask for any of this. And you've always been my son, my pride. I've never blamed you for any of it. All I wanted was for you to be safe, to be healthy. That's all I've ever wanted." The tears welled up in his eyes, and in that moment, I realized that healing wasn't just about the body, it was about the heart. Forgiveness, understanding, and love would help us rebuild what had been broken, and we would move forward, stronger than before, together. As time passed, the scars of the past began to heal. The betrayal, the lies, the penitent was all behind us now. We were no longer weighed down by the darkness that had hung over our family. There was a new sense of peace, a new hope that we had all worked so hard to find. Adam was getting stronger every day, and so was our family. We were reconnecting in ways I never thought possible. Brandon had been my rock throughout this entire ordeal. His unwavering loyalty, his willingness to fight for the truth, it had been his strength that had guided us through the darkest moments. And now, as I watched him interact with Adam, I saw a bond forming between them that I hadn't seen in years. The two of them were closer than ever, united by the struggles they had faced together. I realized then that this was a new chapter for all of us. We had been through so much, but now we were beginning again. Adam had a second chance at life, and Brandon and I were going to make sure he didn't waste it. But more than that, I had learned to lean on my family again, to trust in their love and support. Together, we would overcome anything that came our way. As I sat down to write in my journal one evening, reflecting on everything we had been through, I felt a sense of peace settle in my heart. The storm had passed, and in its wake, we had found something beautiful, a new hope, a new beginning, and I knew, no matter what happened next, we would face it together. As I sat quietly, reflecting on everything that had happened, a deep sense of gratitude filled me. The journey we had endured had been filled with pain, betrayal, and loss, but it had also brought us closer, united us in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Adam was healthier, stronger, and his future was no longer uncertain. The lies had been uncovered, and the truth had set us free. But more than anything, I had learned something valuable through all of this: the power of love, family, and truth. It had taken me a long time to realize it, but now, I understood. Love isn't just about the good times. It's about standing by each other through the darkest moments, about forgiving, about rebuilding what was broken. Family isn't just about blood, it's about trust, loyalty, and the strength to face life's challenges together. As I closed my journal, I looked around at my family, now stronger and more united than ever. It wasn't perfect, and the scars would remain, but we had grown from the experience. The lesson was clear: never let the darkness overshadow the light of love. Never let the lies keep you from seeking the truth. And so, as I look forward, I know that no matter what comes next, we will face it together, with love, with strength, and with the lessons we've learned along the way. The road ahead is uncertain, but one thing is for sure: we'll walk it hand in hand, with our hearts open to whatever comes. As we move forward, I want you to carry this with you. No matter the trials life throws your way, the love of your family is the one thing you can always count on. It's the glue that binds us together, even in the darkest times. Never let go of the truth, even when it's hard to face. If this story touched you, made you think, or made you reflect on your own family, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment and share where you're watching from. It means a lot to me. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There's always more to discover, and I'll be here, sharing stories that are real, raw, and full of heart. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Take care of your loved ones, because, in the end, they're the ones who will always be there for you.